Well, the last piece was inspirational and wonderful, so I have no idea how we're going to follow that, but we'll do our best.
You have to turn it on. I think you got it. Where is it? All right. Can I? Tiffany, you're awesome. That was amazing. Thank you. Tough to follow, but it's interesting. I mean, it's great perspective, and it's interesting because what we're here to talk about is the role of social engagement in virtual reality. And we're seeing a lot of interesting things happening across the spectrum with virtual reality and immersive media. And Ted and I thought it may make sense to just have a conversation about what's happening.
Sure.
So, in terms of what you're doing at Fox as the futurist, so just so you know what the role, maybe you can just describe what you do at Fox.
Yeah, it's hard to describe and even harder to live in an amazing and wonderful way. I basically have been tasked for the last probably almost 4 years now to try and be a little bit of a crystal ball to where things might be going in terms of the world of technology and how it relates to the future of entertainment and all things related to what a large media/movie studio does and works on and thinks about. So when I explain it to people, more than anything, I explain that really what I am is a glorified lab rat. I spend my time mostly in a lab. We call it the Fox Innovation Lab. And I test things and think about things and experiment with things and dance around the future to try and sort of find the pointers, find the things that will give us indications of what may or may not be important and what may or may not matter in a world with so much information and so many things coming at you in so many ways. As you guys all know from this conference, you're living inside this in a way that has found a whole new sphere of influence related to social media, dynamic streaming, live streaming. And based on just the timing of me dropping into this world, what has happened is the world of immersive media has started to become a commercial entity, move out of the lab and move into reality of commercial product and commercial entertainment software and hardware being built. So I'm deeply involved in the worlds of virtual reality and augmented reality in lots of different ways. And I spend a lot of my time sort of looking at what will that all mean as we move forward. And I tend to put a fairly long lens on this. None of this is going to all be figured out tomorrow or even the day after tomorrow. We are still years away from true commercial dynamic acceptance where everybody is using these tools. Like I see all of these tools, right? These modern tools that have now replaced large broadcast cameras, and you're covering this in a very interesting way. And everybody effectively has these tools. They're ubiquitous, right? The next step of ubiquity is when all of these things that we're looking at, when all of these iPhones and Android phones and various little camera doodles that are now these modern tools of communication look as relevant to all of you as big CRT tube monitors on your desk, which, trust me, will happen. That all of this stuff and the stuff that every one of you have won't be the modern current tool set that you use. It's going to change, and it's going to change radically over the next X amount of years. How many years? Harder to predict, but it's still on the order of years, but we're working on a lot of stuff in that fashion.
That's fine. And I kind of posted something on Twitter about transforming you from being a futurist to a nowist.
Or a pastist.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I see people out here with spectacles on and some of the devices that you're talking about. And one of the challenges that we're seeing in immersive media and content is how are we bringing widespread audiences to the medium. And ultimately, as an example, for those of you who don't know what Ziality is all about, we're looking to build and deploy social VR tools and capabilities. I think somebody has a video of what we had. Maybe we can just play that real quick, and then we can jump into some of those tools. Play that video.
Arziality. We believe in immersive media. Virtual reality, 360 video, augmented reality, mixed reality. Immersive media has the power to inspire, to entertain, to educate, to take you places you've never been before. And it's rapidly growing. We believe that everyone in the world should be able to experience and interact with this new medium. So we've created the world's first immersive media platform enriched with powerful, socially engaging viral features to deliver 360 video and VR to your audiences today on the most widely distributed devices. There are infinite ways to explore these captivating experiences, and they're meant to be shared. So we set out to bring social and immersive media together. Relives, a first-of-its-kind feature that enables viewers to capture their immersive media experiences and create reaction videos using their front-facing camera and microphone, and to share their unique take through social media. Now your audience can show how they experience their world, powered by Ziality.
So the reason why I want to bring that up is because as you know, we're talking to talking with the audience here. A lot of folks are experimenting with 360 VR, immersive media, and what we're finding, again, we're a tech company, right? So what we're seeing is that people aren't looking at the other parts of the video. So the question becomes, how do we help build audiences for people?
Yeah, well, and what's interesting, what's so intriguing about what you're doing, what I like about it, is there's a core sort of understanding of where and how we consume media today, even up until now, that still lives mostly in some sort of form of what I call restricted space, right? There's some sort of reticle. There's a box on your phone. There's a box on this projector. There's a box on all the plasma TVs that are floating out in the LED TVs. And we try and fool ourselves into accepting that there's more around the sides of that box. But technology now allows us to actually start to experiment with what's outside of that box and be able to move around and functionally understand something that I like to call spatial entertainment, where things aren't just inside a rectangle or a square, and we're not just moving the thing around to sort of pretend to enhance that square or that rectangle, that the best technology as it starts to emerge, and it's now becoming commercialized with the Oculus Rift and the Vive and the HoloLens and the ODG glasses and Magic Leap, which is coming, and more of these devices that are starting to explore the boundaries of what the visual entertainment and everything else associated with it will be, that the social engagement part of that is still a bit left out of the conversation, right? But it's a massively important part of what will make people find the intrigue in breaking out of their rectangle. And the tools that find ways to do it, and a lot of companies are working on this in various ways, startups like yours and bigger companies like Google and Facebook and so forth and so on, they're all trying to figure out how do they find that engagement point? How do they find that lock-in point, right? And again, this will take time. The road is not a straight road. It's going to go all over the place, just like what happened with the media consumption and the way we use things like Periscope and all these other devices and softwares now wasn't a straight path. It took all kinds of strange diversions and moments to get us there. I think, you could look at something like Snapchat, and if you could say, when that started versus where it is now, if you could have predicted that, I don't think anybody could have predicted that. We were talking at lunch about YouTube, right? YouTube is 12 years old. So it's not even a teenager yet, effectively, right? First YouTube video was posted 12 years ago, give or take. And now the statistics, as a lot of you know, because you live in it, 300 hours a minute get posted, multi-billion eyeballs on it all the time, but still effectively looking at some sort of restricted space. And they're starting to experiment YouTube 360 and YouTube VR with what happens next. So it's really interesting.
And I think one of the things that as folks in the social media landscape understand is the opportunity to connect and engage with audiences. I think the industry is preparing to start to deliver tools to creators, including things like monetization engines out of the box. I think it's very important for we listened to the Periscope folks earlier. It almost has to be inherently and native to the experiences that enable creators to make money in the space. And how ultimately the medium needs ordinary users to come in, right? And so those types of ordinary users can come in through major brands, like sports franchises, right? Whether it's you know, San Francisco 49ers or the San Francisco Giants or somebody like that. But the other thing is that how does this community leverage these capabilities as well? So we've seen Live 360 with periscopes. There's some other live capabilities. There's new camera technologies that are coming out. We need to start thinking about how do we engage ordinary consumers of the content.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
Because quite frankly, nobody is doing this.
Right. Yeah. Well, I kind of am every day in various ways, but
you're
I'm a
in the
unique
lab,
character,
man.
right? We call this the box on the face phenomenon, right? And the box on the face phenomenon is only going to take us so far. That is going to change. And don't take my word for it. Take Mark Zuckerberg's word for it when he's up on stage in a big Facebook conference explaining that why he bought the company that he bought with Oculus and what he's doing with it, and the fact that he's very, very overt about the fact that the consumer dynamic, the social dynamic, is not something where you'll be isolated and putting a box on your face. It's going to change, and it's going to change radically. So you can track that and learn about that. Just see what he says. It's pretty apparent where we think things are going. You make a point about users' first touch to new experiences. And when I give a lot of these talks and sort of around the world, and one of the things I refer to, which I'm curious to see how it resonates with you guys, is my truly, well, I had virtual reality experiences a long time ago in the Disney days and doing stuff back then in the 90s. But what I would consider my first commercial virtual reality experience was actually the Nintendo Wii, the first time I saw the Nintendo Wii. And it's transformational in a lot of ways. People don't realize how powerful that was, even though it's kind of cloaked in this idea that it's a gaming device. It was actually much more than a gaming device. It was actually a virtual reality tool. First time I saw it was in a shopping mall in Florida. And I watched people with this little wand bowling inside this little demo that they were doing in a mall. And I went over and I was like, is that woman bowling right now? Like actually thinking she's bowling? And like, yeah, would you like to try it? And I tried it and I went, I need to buy 2 of these right now. How do I get these? So they were not available for a year. I said, I want to buy the one right off the floor. Can I buy it? No, of course not. But a year later, it came out and everybody had one effectively because it was so intriguing to virtualize entertainment, to actually take it, even though you were still watching it on a screen. The concept of connecting your physical body to it made it more like a theme park attraction, made it more like you were doing something that you did in another environment. You bowled, you boxed, you played tennis, and you brought it into the home as an entertainment experience, and you virtualized that. The point that I'm making here is you had to actually do it to understand the power of it. You could have watched a video on it, you could have watched a commercial, and you would have been like, okay. Right. But the first time you put that wand in your hand and went like this, and it actually felt like you were bowling, you were all in, right?
And the thing about the Wii was it was inherently social.
Yeah.
Because you actually did it
and you
with
did it with other people. Right.
The biggest challenge right now in the industry is how do you make this social?
Right. But there's a lot of experiments, and more than experiments, now commercial product being delivered that has a goal of being social. So that I could give you a list of probably 50 or more games. So it all starts with games, right? And then it's emerging into more sophisticated stories and more sophisticated ideas. But 50 or more games that are inherently social by their nature, by what they've been created as. So there's something called Raw Data, which is a social shooter game. You actually play it with other people. There's a Western shooter thing called Dead and Buried, where you and I could go into a saloon and have a gunfight together, and you actually feel like it's real. And I could give you oodles of these things. There's, in the mobile VR space, there's actually a virtual poker room that has become very popular, where people like play online poker, right? And that's social by its nature, virtually social, but you're still playing it on a little screen or a computer or a laptop. Now they've actually created a space where you feel like you're actually in a casino, and you're sitting and playing with avatars of other people playing poker. So that's a well-understood dynamic within the worlds of the developers and the creators. It's just, it hasn't fully crossed the chasm yet for people to understand how powerful it's going to be. Other than young kids that live on an Xbox and a PlayStation instead of watching television, most of them are connected to some sort of service like an Xbox Live, where they have virtual friends and virtual social experiences with people that they've probably never met in person. but they'll sit and play Battlefield or Call of Duty, and they'll actually be on teams together. They'll know each other's names. They'll know where they live. They'll actually have social interaction with them, but they've never met in the real world. And that's part of what you're working on and others are working on.
And the thing about, for us and this specific community, who's doing amazing work, actually, because you're at Fox, right? So a lot of the things that the folks in this room are doing is actually drawing eyeballs away from things that Fox does.
Yeah, traditional media, right.
Right? And what's interesting now is there are tools and models to start developing and delivering engagement capabilities through traditional videos and now with 360 and immersive media. Because ultimately, in the end, if you look at creators in the social media landscape as brands, and you're kind of measuring content, views, likes, followers, those types of things. How do you get someone to go back to a video over and over and over again? There's new metrics that are being formed, right? Because again, if you think about the concept of you've taken this lean back experience and now you're asking people to actually lean in and move around, for 100 years we haven't actually taught anyone to do that. And so since the live action real theater. So ultimately, in the end, we're stepping into that, and some of the creators in the room who are actually in the process of starting to create live 360 or immersive content or comedy sketches that are in a physical space, you have an opportunity to create some interesting opportunities and deliver new ways to experience that, and then offer up a way to go back to it over and over and over again. That changes the economics of that piece of content or video that you've created for your social media followers and your audiences.
Right. So in our world, as this giant movie studio and all the other things that go along with it, what we're trying to do is figure out how do we drop into that slipstream, right? There's all kinds of new things being developed, and the undercurrents of new technology tend to not come from big giant companies. They tend to come from small little companies that dance around the edges and are really experimenting with new things in new ways and don't have the same sort of monetization goals or challenges as a big company does. And they're also not mired in what are their traditional business models that they're making money in now. So for what part of my job is to sort of look and think like a little startup inside a big corporation, right? In sort of a company that has lots of different people and massive success and massive amounts of eyeballs all around the world. But those eyeballs are changing, and they're thinking about doing new things in new ways. So the question for us is, how do you connect the dots at the right time so that you enter into the slipstream at the most optimal time to take advantage of what's new? But if you come in a little too early, you could spend your cycles before it catches. If you come in too late, you don't even have a chance to catch up. So what I'm always advising is take your shots early, take a lot of them. Don't think of success in the way that a big existing company that's been around for 100 years thinks about success. Think about success in the way that 3 kids in the basement that are kicking something around for 6 months thinks about as success. And that's your best chance to actually turn it into something new and become a big conglomerate. And all you have to do is look at entities like Google or Facebook or Snap or any of these other entities to know that it's part of the psychology that allows them to be successful. And the difficulty is when you get so big as a modern new company like this that now has thousands, in many cases, 100,000 employees and all kinds of tentacles around the world, how do you continue to redevelop yourself as a startup? So when you look at Google throwing themselves head and shoulders into autonomous driving, right? Yeah. You wonder, well, don't they have their hands full, like dealing with the search engine business and the ad tech business and all that stuff? And the answer is, of course, yes. But they're also experimenting in what the future will be. We think about that, I think about that stuff, because autonomous driving is potentially the next entertainment platform, right? When I don't have to drive my car myself, what am I gonna do? Maybe I'll watch a movie, maybe I'll be in VR, maybe I'll actually do my social media, or I'll do my email, or I'll send my texts, or I'll video chat. Interesting, right? Right. But typically movie studios don't have someone that gets to think that way all the time. So I'm kind of lucky to be able to be that guy that gets to think that way all the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting job you've carved out for yourself. And, what I always find fascinating is really looking at the intersection of technology and creative communities and big companies and small companies, or even individuals that are really looking to innovate how they connect. And ultimately, in the end, we have a new medium on our hands. What are we going to do with it? When people say it's going to be this or it is this, quite frankly, it might be that, it might be that, it might be something else. We haven't figured it out yet, right? Right now, we're in the process of all of us testing and just creating an open community around how we can share.
Well, and what I like to keep a close eye on, which I have to imagine you guys, because you're here at this conference and do this stuff, is you keep a really close eye on authenticity, right? You kind of, and our meters, our spider sense is much more attuned than it used to be to, is this an authentic piece of whatever their medium, whatever their form of the art, whatever their form is going after? What are their aims? What are their goals? And certainly there can be an economic goal, and no one denies that, and that's valuable. But underneath it, you have to have a real, truly authentic reason to deliver the message in a way that you're doing. So when I see the best VR experiences that I get to see, and some of the augmented stuff that you'll all get a chance to see in the next couple of years that I'm starting to see now, my sort of sense, my kind of divining rod of what is going to work, what isn't going to work, is very instinctual. It doesn't relate to how much money did they put against it, how big of the stars did they put against it. All those are elements of success, but the true success is, was it authentic to what they wanted to do? Did they really lock in on something interesting?
So that brings me to, like, you guys recently did something for the 24, for 24 and The Martian, a bunch of stuff. You've got that type of stuff all the way down to,
To
a wing eating contest.
Yeah, and to giving
Right. Might be
360
kind of
cameras to
Athletes.
major athletes and letting them ride on the bus and post that on Facebook and Facebook Live.
That's right.
So it crosses all kinds of stratosphere, right? There's massive production effect and element and work that goes into building a major commercial product. But does it actually, touch you in a certain way? Did you actually love it beyond the fact that someone just put a big budget and brought some big talent to it? Is there something really important about it? And really what it comes down to is, you hear this phrase a lot, but it's like, does it matter to you? Did it really matter? Like, why did you do it, and why was it valuable? And at the end of the day, none of the things that you think, from like the external, like how much money do we put against it, how much time did we put against it, makes it authentic or makes it matter. It's just, what was the vision of the creator, and did they actually achieve that goal? Did they find success? And if they do, then often these things blossom, right? And that's when you see what we call a viral video. When something goes viral today, it had nothing to do with the fact that they put X amount of dollars into it. Some might have millions of dollars, some might have 30 cents. But when it goes viral, it's because it touched something in our humanity, right? Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing about the next wave of technology is it actually connects with our humanity even more robustly than the current technology does, because it can be much more immersive. It can take you places. So it's actually much more powerful, which then adds to all kinds of ethical questions and concerns and logic points of what happens when the fake version of reality becomes more interesting and more real than the real version of reality, which is already starting to happen, especially if you look around.
Are you talking about fake news?
Well, yeah, right? But if you look around a conference like this, and during the conference today, there's a lot of people constantly sort of working themselves, right? And that's a cultural accepted thing now, where that would be completely ridiculous a couple of years ago.
I think that's ultimately the spectrum, right? You have everything from high-end cinematic, stuff with Matt Damon, all right, all that links out to a full promotional campaign for driving, movies and TV shows, all the way down to opportunities for, sports franchise to connect with their audience and drive new models of engagement. And I would encourage some of you, I think you guys have seen it as a theme through these couple of days, where we've got a new medium. We have no idea what to do with it, right? So it's literally, it's a new creative platform. There are tools that are coming to not only create content, there are tools that are coming to innovate and create new engagement models around it and drive behavior, which ultimately could lead and will lead to new monetization models. And that's what companies are working on, right? How do we create money for creators? That's very important to us. I know that. And I think it's partly one of the reasons why we kind of get into this game.
Yeah, and I don't think any of the things that you're doing on a daily basis are actually going to change. You're just going to have a better, more evolved tool to actually enhance those experiences well beyond the limited real estate that you have now on your phone. And I think that in and of itself...
Because there's infinite number of ways to watch something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's out there for the taking, right? Those that are trying to figure this out early will have the better chance to be the experts in the field once the field starts to become a field. And it is really starting to become a field now. I mean, all of the major platforms have some sort of 360 type of viewing mechanism. YouTube, Google, Facebook, so forth and so on. And stuff like you're doing plugs into that ecosystem, you know, in a really interesting way. So you're learning a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, just from the video, just so you guys know, reaction videos are pretty important. I think that, so one of the things that we've done is given users or consumers of content the ability to record the way they watch the 360 video, capturing their face using the selfie cam, along with the microphone to kind of sync up a highlight video of your video and share that via Facebook.
Yeah, it's cool. So if you went back a generation and asked people, or let's come maybe 2 generations now, and asked people, like, in the future, people will just want to watch other people play video games. And that's going to be a thing. And not a little tiny thing. It's going to be a humongous thing, right? Yeah. That is bigger than lots of broadcast entities. And, you know, when you look about what Twitch has done and others in the space, that came, again, out of that authentic understanding of this is what people are going to want to do. So initially, there's no monetization around it at all. There's just people that are really interested in seeing what their friends are doing that are really good at playing first-person shooters. And then it literally becomes this cross-cultural phenomenon that seeps into so many layers, and it's actually helped create a new form of socialization and social media. And then again, as it applies to new technology, you think it's cool if you're into that Twitch world, like this young man probably is, to do it on a little screen or a medium-sized screen. When you can actually be inside someone's game world and live inside it and watch that expert move through a CSGO type experience, trust me, it's unbelievable.
Or as these guys are creating, be in it in the world you created, and then allow your fans and your audiences to give you their point of view of your content and share that. So now we've created a dynamic way for you to connect with your audience. Try it out. Give us feedback. We're here to fix it and, you know, hack at it and see what works.
And I'm just here to learn and play and experiment and hopefully find a few things out on the way to maybe being a little more right than wrong, and that's a good place to be.
So we might have a couple questions here. I know we're kind of running out on time. Hold on for a sec. He's running.
Coming with a mic.
Right.
All right. Bit of a long question, but so just to kind of give you the analogy, I listen to this radio station locally in LA called KPCC. I love the radio station. It's great. And they always have these things where they're trying to raise money, and they're like, you got to dial this number. And I'm driving. I only listen to it in the car, and I'm driving. So I'm on one platform listening to the radio, and they want me to go to another platform, the phone, to connect with them. And I never do it, even though I love KPCC. So for the VR analogy, I remember I was watching this piece about the Nepal earthquake, and it was a completely engaging piece. And when you see something in virtual reality, like an earthquake, it's a great use case because you're looking around, you can see the destruction, and it was just like incredibly powerful. But then at the end, there's no way to engage with that content other than taking your headset off and going to the web. So my question is, how much resources are you allocating to creating native call to actions within virtual reality? Because it would have been nice at the end to have a call to action like subscribe to our list or donate now or something within the VR piece, like a kind of an Amazon one-click version of I tap on the headset and now I'm engaging with that. But it doesn't seem like people are really adding these kind of tools, and it seems in particularly need for social stuff like Ziali's putting out, that we need to have native VR calls to action and engagement instead of having to take the headset off and then going onto a website.
Right, you're hired.
So here's a question for you.
So let me just
answer it, and then I'll ask
So
a question.
I think there's a couple of things that there's some technical hurdles and challenges to that, specifically with head-mounted displays. If there's anybody from Oculus here, please open up, pass-through authentication through Oculus so we can actually connect with users. Short of that, there's opportunities to use mobile devices. But moreover, around your question of activation, I'm also, an advisor to, an organization called Erase Child Trafficking. So some of the folks in the room are here, and it's very important for organizations like that to share content that drives them through the entire flow to activation, right? And so there are use cases that we're working on around those types of things. Because ultimately, creating engagement is one thing, but creating engagement that drives activation is another. And obviously, for people like you guys, for creators specifically, it then affords the opportunity to kind of create new models of revenue.
So here's the question. As you're driving and listening to, I'm going to say, Radio Lab on KPCC, which is one of my favorites, right? Or one of the TED Talks that they play on KPCC or something. And similar to what Alexa does with the Alexa Home stuff, right? If you're living in a VR world and you're watching something that is incredibly engaging because you are feeling the moment and you would like to help, would you be okay linking your account and saying, okay, VR, I'd like to donate X to this, go ahead and do it. You would never have to leave your headset. It would just automatically understand how to do that. There are steps that's already happening. So in the Vive, which is the HTC product that's linked to a very popular gaming network called Valve and Steam, they're already now building a way to link your mobile phone into the VR world. So it doesn't matter what phone it is. It can be any brand, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be an HTC phone. And you tie it through Bluetooth to the headset so that if you're in VR and you're like playing a game or watching a video or being involved in something and you get a call, you can actually see it in VR and you could actually respond via voice text. In the Gear VR, in the Oculus platform, you use the Samsung voice services to actually talk to the stuff because it's just kind of hard to type in VR. So very often if I want to search for surfing videos in VR in 360, I'll just say Samsung VR, show me surfing videos in their VR video platform, which lives inside the headset, and you can just pull them up. So the voice side of it, I think, is the solution to that. As you're driving, your mobile phone can listen to you, and you can say, hey, I just watched this thing, or I just listened to this thing, I'd like to donate. Great, click, it's done. Maybe there's a little Big Brother aspect to that, but you've already likely given your credentials, and you're already good, right? So I think that's the solution to that.
Any other questions? Are there any questions on there? Nope. Dodger fan.
You touched briefly on something that looked like you were developed or that had just been released recently, where it showed the reaction of the person and what they see in the VR at the same time. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so there's a feature called Relives, and it's the ability for your fans to actually record their movement through a 360 video and capture their face and allow them to kind of narrate through that scene. So while they're watching it, you can actually produce another video from that 360 video. And then the output is going to be just a flat video that somebody can lean back and just watch the way somebody narrated through that. So an example could be you could put out like a comedy skit that's in 360, and then you can have some of your fans or your audience to actually create different ways of watching it. They can create 5 or 6, 10 different ways of watching it. So now from the one piece of video that you created, you've got 11 different ways of watching a 360 video, right? So ultimately what we're trying to do, again, is fatten the tail of the content and lengthen it. So it drives repeat plays of that one video.
And you're trying to bridge the gap between the current world and the new world, right?
Right. So now all of a sudden you've now created an opportunity to not have people lean in and try to do this because it freaks people out, just to lean back and watch the way somebody else, navigated through a 360 video.
And to teach them that then they can do this themselves someday. There are other examples of this where like a lot of the early demonstrations of VR spaces were putting people in a virtual movie theater. So you'd put a headset on, and you were in a traditional movie theater. It felt like a movie theater, and you could watch a movie on a big giant screen, or in some cases, multiple screens. And it was kind of a stepping stone to, once you get what this is, because it is something that you understood from the real world, then I can take you out of that real world. And I can show you what happens when I remove the theater and put you inside the movie, right? But if you didn't have the first step to actually understand what the hell was going on, it's harder to get to the second step. And sometimes we forget, as we start to become practitioners of the new medium and we're involved in it all the time, we forget that not everybody's like us, that not everybody spends time in a VR headset once a day, once a week, once a month. I'm in it every day for multiple hours a day, right? So I often forget that I'm a unique use case and that everybody else is coming along on that journey. And I have to remember to start them slow and give them nudges to get them across those thresholds.
Example is, let's say, Dodgers, right? Imagine the Dodgers put out a piece of 360 video, but all of their athletes give it their own unique perspective of it.
It's cool.
All right, we'll go outside and kind of hang out.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.